Hey, welcome back. My name is Deborah Peters, and this is the Deborah Peters Show. This show is just for you. I've curated 5 main topics that will enable you to expand your life, be fulfilled, happy, wealthy, and healthy. And it is going to be topics that allow you to grow your business and dial in your self-expression, because at the end of the day, it's all about consciousness. Consciousness is all there is. And the more self-aware you can become, the higher level consciousness you can live your life within, and the results will show themselves to you. So thank you for joining me. Make sure that you subscribe, hit the like button, definitely drop a comment, because the algorithm really likes that. And it populates my show and it gets them out to more people. I bring on guests that I am inspired by, and I address topics that I've had countless opportunity to do coaching with clients on over the last 20 some years of my coaching career in 19 countries. And so today I have Judith Weigle. She's my buddy. This is our 3rd kick at the can, and we're going to get into that second divorce situation, in case you got that going on, or maybe just second marriage if you're just exiting one and you're thinking about the next one. Judith is the Amicable divorce expert, and she knows how to put together your paperwork and how to help you negotiate those deals without fighting and killing each other and spending millions of dollars on attorney fees. But here's the burning question, Judith. What's going to make the second marriage any different than the first marriage? I know you have repeat customers, so
we all love repeat business, right?
Yeah, we do.
An oncologist has repeat business. But it doesn't mean that it's the best business you could have, or at least on the customer's side, it may not be the best business. But Deborah, as you say all the time on your show, everything's a journey. Yeah. We can't put the tag of bad or good. We just have to put the tag of learning. So the statistics, let's just start with divorce statistics.
All right.
First marriages end, so 50% of first marriages end in divorce, 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 70% of third marriages. This is not a statistic that's supposed to be going up, yet it does. And this is Department of Labor statistics I'm quoting. So they've done their research. So here's what I think it is. We just keep marrying the same person. We don't let enough time go by to evaluate why the previous marriage didn't work and be very honest with ourselves. It's not the other person's fault.
Never. I was just in Newport Beach facilitating a leadership retreat, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said the divorce rate in Newport Beach, California is 82%. I know.
I need to put an office there. Staff.
You really do. You got to get down there. They need you. And those are heavy hitters. Like, we're talking millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars.
Without a doubt. And Elisa Viejo, which is a little south of Newport Beach, still in Orange County, is one of the top 9 cities in the country for divorce rate.
Unbelievable. It makes me just want to move away.
Well,
like, who wants to live in an environment where everybody's of that mindset?
You kind of are moved away, but you're right. I mean, these are very wealthy people. And I think a lot of times with wealthy people, maybe they just think they know what they don't know and don't take the time to figure out what's going on. I mean, do wealthy people make different decisions than people who aren't quite as wealthy? I really don't know. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I've had a lot of ultra high net worth individuals as clients, multimillionaires and billionaires, and yes, they do think differently about life and all sorts of things. But I don't think you could say that because of their money they think differently about marriage or commitment. I think that's an ego game, right? It's so there's a lot, like you said, a lot. So first of all, the question is, are you going to work on yourself between relationships? Because if you're in an unhealthy relationship or a marriage that isn't working, and you're pointing the finger at the other person, you always know there's three fingers pointing back at you. And the burning question always, the question that begs asking is, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to just blame your way out of the marriage into the next one, justifying your limitations and not taking any responsibility for your emotional programming or your childhood traumas or your low self-esteem or whatever the hiccup is, and actually take some steps to heal yourself? Or are you just going to look outside of yourself for that next person to fill that void? Because that never lasts.
Right. Okay. So that's exactly what happens. I'm quite impressed when I get the repeat business in, and it hasn't been that long since the previous divorce happened. And that's really the case. So you can't blame the other person. I mean, even if they did something that was the deal breaker, you still have to go back to, were there other things that I should really be paying attention to as well? Why did I make this decision? Why was I attracted to this person? How did I behave in the relationship? What was I looking for to be nurtured in the relationship? So your emotional being changes, as you well know, because I think you even talked about this in the last episode that we did together, talking about we are changed people emotionally.
Sure.
We just need to address it. We need to learn from it and give some space and time before we get married. I guess you can't really stop a relationship from happening. If you're intrigued by somebody, you have to explore it, but you don't have to marry.
I know, right? You don't have to go the deep end. So what I want to say around this is, whatever's going on in the relationship, it doesn't come out of nowhere. It doesn't come out of the blue. So cheating, addictions, abuse, gaslighting, whatever it is that's breaking down the bond, never comes out of the blue. We would like to think it does, because then we can be the innocent party. However, I really believe strongly that since the pandemic, the consciousness in general of humanity has risen and is continuing to rise every single day. And what that means is people are really starting to question social constructs, social norms, this fog of programming that has been laid over us through propaganda for decades, convincing us that we're weak, we need someone outside of us to make decisions for us, that we need to be saved, that we're a victim and poor me. I mean, that's a huge program, a heavy, heavy program. And also the program of what a marriage should be is a heavy program. But just one second before you comment, where I was going with that is this. Within each person's psychology is a vibration based on past programming, whether that's limiting beliefs, negative emotions, false premises, distorted perceptions of reality, the blame game, I'm weak, I'm powerless, I'm put upon, all of that. And then I'm looking for a savior. All of that, when it's percolating in the background, it creates this veil over us seeing truth, us seeing reality. So there could be cheating going on, and we can pretend or ignore it, right? But our essence of our being, our vibration, our subconscious mind knows full well something is amiss. And then we have to decide if we're going to ignore it. And that's really the crux of this business of marriage here. It's go into that baby with your eyes wide open and be willing to stand for what you believe in, have boundaries, and pay attention. What's your husband doing? What's your wife doing? Are their communication styles changing? Is their body language changing? Are they avoiding you? You know, what are the changes in the dynamic of the relationship? If you're not paying attention to that, honestly, I just I have really no sympathy. Sorry, but that's
well, true. Okay. So it's happened a number of times that I get a call from somebody very upset. They've just been served with a petition for divorce.
Yeah.
And the first comment is, it came out of the blue. I'm completely shocked. Everything was going so well. I don't know where this came from. And I'm silent generally. In fact, I don't know who's calling me. And so I have to listen. And the more I let that person talk, the more they say, well, you know, we tried therapy a number of times. It didn't seem to work. We were always arguing. So the reality comes out. I think initially people just have to buffer all of that. They have to be safe. And so to say, I didn't expect it, it came out of nowhere, is their safe zone. But if you allow them to talk, and this is what
it comes out in
society. If we allow people to talk without being interrupted, their own words keep coming back at them, and they will start editing themselves, and they will then get to their own reality.
But do they edit enough that they get it? That there's a light bulb?
No. They at least edit enough to know this didn't come out of the blue. Unravel is huge. It's an enormous process to unravel what happened, or at least why did I make the choices that I did initially and throughout. Go ahead, Dan.
Right. Well, you know, I think it really comes down to being present in the relationship and being self-aware enough that you can see your own stuff, right? So I you know, recently I started seeing someone and I catch myself like when he says something that I pushes my buttons and then I come back with something, I catch myself and I go, okay, you're defending, Deborah. What's the defense? It's fear. What's the fear? Like I unpack it for myself. But what if you don't know how to do that?
Okay.
And that's the thing. Like what I'm really saying here is people need to wake up to their own programming and then their marriages will work.
Okay, so you're so right. This is Tuesday that we're doing this. Mm-hmm. Sunday night, 2 nights ago, right before I went to bed, I watched for the third time Brene Brown's Call to Courage video. And it was something that you just said. She's very funny, and she talks about her family a lot and makes herself the point of the story quite often. And she was telling a story about her family going on a vacation, and she and her husband snuck out in the morning to go swimming, and she wanted to be vulnerable. And she said to him, you know, I really love you. I haven't felt this close to you in a long time. And he said, yeah, right. The water's great. Let's keep swimming. And she was very offended, very fearful, said it a second time, you know, a little bit later, and he answered the same way. So then she had to muster her courage later on when they went upstairs to the room and said, so what was that all about? It turned out that he was having problems with his hearing and didn't hear her. But she went into what you just said. She said she went into fear mode. She had her own story about what was going on. She wasn't rocking the Speedo like she used to when they were younger, and they were both swimming competitors. And she was making herself into a victim. And thank God she opened up the conversation with him, and he said, I just couldn't hear you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think back of previous relationships where I wasn't that self-aware. I mean, over the course of time and personal growth, even as a coach, you know, it's you got to apply, you got to, you know, physician heal thyself. You have to apply your knowledge to your own relationships while you're helping other people with theirs. But in previous relationships, I wasn't as self-aware. Of course, they've gotten better, but this is the one because I know when I'm out of alignment with me in my response to him. And see, that's the key. I think that's what the whole point of this podcast is about, is before you go running toward the divorce, actually it should be before you go walking down the aisle, but before you go running toward the divorce, you really need to take stock, take a stock of who you're being with yourself. You know, are you being honest with yourself? Are you being vulnerable? Are you projecting your fears and doubts and trust issues? Are you projecting previous relationship experiences onto this one? And then, you know, the thing is that whoever you're in relationship with, you know, whether it's you and me as podcast hosts, reciprocating, whether it's my girlfriend, whether it's a boyfriend, a husband, a wife, a boss, a client, whoever's in front of you is the mirror. It's like every person we have a relationship with is you pushed out. They can only mirror back to you the way you see and feel about yourself.
Right.
Doesn't that save a lot of marriages?
Yes. And I had dinner a couple weeks ago with a woman who had been divorced twice, and now she was dating again. And she's affluent. She's only married on an affluent level. And now she's dating as a person with 2 adult children in their 20s and 2 divorces from very prominent people. And so she wants to do a podcast on dating after divorce. But she said one thing that I hadn't really heard anybody say in a while, and that was this: what do you bring to the relationship? We're always looking to see what somebody's going to bring to us. Have you considered what you're bringing to the relationship?
Yeah.
Because you need to answer that as well. And so when you're looking at potential mates and deciding if this person checks the boxes for you and moves you emotionally, now what are you doing to enhance their lives? And I think that's an important question to ask ourselves.
Right. And so that's, I know we talked about this in previous podcasts. It's 2 things. One, it's contribution. You know, what are you willing and capable of contributing? And then what are the points of connection, right? Because initially, when it's all like fun and sexy and honeymoon time, we have lots of points of connection because we've come together. But what happens is those points of connection can become stale unless we're feeding them with new points of connection. So what does the relationship stand on? And then what does the relationship stand for? And how do we feed that? And you need to have a game plan for that.
No, that was really well said. Now that's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's actually giving me pause for thought, because if I may be vulnerable for a minute. So I was married, divorced in 1993. I really did feel he was my soulmate when I first met him. So I understand when people say, you just know. You just know.
You do 100%.
So there was but you still have to nurture.
Yeah.
I didn't understand how to do that.
Well, nobody says that. I think that should be in the wedding vows. You know, this nonsense of sickness and health and all this babble. Why don't we put something in there that has some value? Like, I promise to contribute to us. I promise to participate in creating new points of connection. I promise to, what was your point?
What are we bringing to the table?
Yeah, I promise to bring my best self to the table at all times. And if I'm not in a place to do that, I'll take a time out and I won't get in your face. I mean, you know, I'm just paraphrasing, but
no, I'm right there with you, because prior to my divorce life, I was in the live entertainment business.
Mm-hmm.
And I went from ticketed shows to selling music for private events, both celebrity headliner acts and just, you know, cover bands. And on the west side of Los Angeles, you can send children to college by producing entertainment for weddings. I mean, these people spend buku bucks on weddings. And so I always love a good wedding. And I would show up for a lot of the ceremonies, and I would listen to these vows, and I would keep rewriting them in my head. But these are wrong. These aren't real. What is trust? What do we know about trust? I trust that you won't be a normal human being and do things that make me mad.
Yeah.
No, these are the wrong vows. You know, trust needs to be redefined. I trust that we will have problems. I trust that we will hit rocky patches. But I also intend to dig in and work.
Yes.
And maybe that's a better vow to have.
That's a good one. And I'll go look in the mirror before I blame you. You know, another tool for the listeners, viewers, is to, if you're in a dialogue with your partner, your mate, your spouse, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and they say something that pushes your buttons,
Mm-hmm.
instead of reacting and you know, being upset or triggered emotionally, reframe it for them. Like reframing, I find that reframing is an amazing tool.
It works in mediation every time.
It works in me all the time in mediation. So why wouldn't it work in a relationship dynamic? You just, so let's say they put something out there that's critical or negative or whatever. Reframe it back to them and ask them, could you say it this way instead? And if they say no, then ask them, well, how could you say it instead? And just get in the habit as communicators to help each other reframe stuff. Because to your point, we are all human beings. We're all dealing with a lot every day in life, and we can get triggered just by something out there and bring it home. And, you know, if you're going to be this person's best friend, which is what I would recommend before you say I do, wouldn't you do that for your buddy? When you do that for your best girlfriend or your BFF, you help them reframe something negative to help them get into a more positive state.
Yes.
Why is it because we sleep in the same bed that we have to fight everything out? Why can't we just hold hands and be kind?
You know, the holding hands thing just made me think it's so lovely.
I'm such a romantic.
You are such a romantic. And I want to share with you the 35-year marriage of my speaking coach. He works on it. They work on it. And he was explaining to me the rituals that they have to stay connected. They literally have daily rituals to stay connected. And they've overcome a lot in their marriage. And he was sharing a little bit of that with me. And then what he felt his job as a husband was to support his wife emotionally, to listen. How easy it is to give gifts to our mates, to our partners that are the perfect gifts because we have listened when they've just given a little throwaway line of, gosh, I would really love that. And that's it.
Yeah.
You have to listen. You have to pay attention. You have to be into the person you're married to. So if you're into the person you're married to, but that person isn't into you, you need to stop.
Well, it's a mirror. So if that person's not into you, then you're not into you.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That was great.
Right? It's like all relationships are the mirror. So if they're not into you, are you into you? Do you practice self-love? Do you see yourself as your own best friend first? How can someone give to you if you can't give to yourself?
That was brilliant. That was brilliant. And that leads me into something. When you saw me look down, I was writing a note.
You're making notes.
Yeah. It just happened today. Okay. Now, I'm a one sport woman, and it's football. It used to be baseball. Now it's football. I live for football season. I enjoy the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's where I'm from. But
I'm a hockey girl. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay, that's fine.
Just throwing that out there.
Well, Gretzky, maybe.
It's like 3 decades ago.
So even though I love the Pittsburgh Steelers, who doesn't love Tom Brady? I mean, come on. The guy's a football god. So he's married to a drop-dead gorgeous woman, Gisele Bündchen.
Yeah.
Supermodel. But literally put her career on hold for the most part to raise the children and let Tom have his career. Who knew he was going to play football forever? You know, she hung on, she hung on, she hung on. And when he announced his retirement at the end of the year, or, you know, back in February after he won the Super Bowl, I said, oh, I wonder how that's going to work for him. What else does he know to do? This has been his life. And Gisele, although she loves the spotlight too, has really pulled back and been a more supportive mate to him. So then after 2 months of retirement, he comes out of retirement, and I said it. I said, this is not going to work well. And then all of a sudden, Gisele's not around. She goes on vacation, and she's not at the first game. He has a very poor 1-2 record now. He lost to Patrick Mahomes Sunday night.
So she was propping him up energetically. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I said to myself, I bet it's about Gisele. I bet she's not there. This is the dynamic he's used to. She props him up. She brings the kids. And lo and behold, on my Yahoo homepage today,
You're funny.
Divorce attorneys.
That's hilarious.
Into what the division of assets would be if they got divorced and they're not living together. So this speaks to what was their marriage dynamic.
Well, obviously there was early on there was an agreement, and so you know this kind of makes me question the old school concept of marriage. So just you were transparent. I'm going to be transparent, okay? So I've been a runner. I've dodged the bullet of getting married successfully, and I'm proud of that because it was really tempting. I mean, there was times in my life where being married would have made a massive, colossal difference in my lifestyle, right? But I've never been one to compromise, and here's why. The old school concept of marriage is that the woman, you know, stays home and does whatever that support role is, kids, soccer, food, house, bills, yeah, all of that, while the man goes out and builds the empire. Now, I know this may not be a popular thing for me to say, but I'm really comfortable with it. That's never been my gig. I've never been willing to do that because I have an empire I am building. And so maybe Gisele did not really like giving up her empire. And I think that if you're going to do that, you have to really, really be okay with all that can turn out to be, because it really essentially, unless you learn to channel your talents and your gifts in a new way, like as a mom or a homemaker, etc., there's always going to be that unfulfilled, there's going to be a void. And sooner or later, you're going to want that.
Right.
Unless you're willing to go through your entire life without it. I think that's where women need to be honest with themselves.
Yes, I kind of think, just from everything I read and by looking at Giselle, she's kept herself trim, very youthful looking. They are both into health. So, right. I mean, at 45, the fact that he can play football and he looks fabulous, there's a lot of bone broth these two people have from.
Or HRT. I think it's HRT, but that's my speculation.
Well, I think from what my reading told me was that she was going to go back into modeling. She put the time in to let him have his career, because if you look at both of their careers, his is far more physical than hers. Hers is appearance, but you can stave that off.
A woman can hang you for a long time. Like, I've seen some pretty dynamic looking 70-year-old women these days.
Yeah, and the modeling career has been extended.
It has.
You're not out of it at 26 years old anymore. Cindy Crawford proved that. Many different models proved that. But so I think, if I'm right, Giselle was offended that this was their plan, and now this wasn't. It was all about Tom again.
Well, it certainly sounds like it's run its course, and I think that's really something that has to be looked at in any relationship. You can negotiate that stuff up front, but you got to keep negotiating it, because people change. People's wants and needs and desires. We all have imagination. So we all imagine our reality into existence. And as we grow as human beings, that shifts and changes. So wouldn't you agree that there should be, like, the way I would see it, I can speak from 2 points. One, the way I would like it to be for me. And two, I for 10 years, I did couples coaching, and this was a tool I used. I would have them sit down at least once a year and review their agreement as a couple to make sure that each person's needs are being met. And if they're not, be honest, and then be willing to adjust. And most importantly, do the self-growth work so that you're not projecting unfulfilled needs onto the other person and making them the problem.
Yes, I agree with all of that. Something else I really worry about in this day and age, and it's still happening. The traditional marriage is still alive, the one you described, that one person, generally the man, goes out to earn build the financial dynasty, and the woman stays home because he makes enough money that they can live a nice life.
And it takes two to run a family. So
the woman that stays at home has an equal measure job. Yeah. It's easy to have children, run a family, and make all that happen. I mean, women are professional wives.
Absolutely. It is profession.
Oh, without a doubt. And then something happens. They grow apart and they've got these children.
Because there's no more new points of connection.
Right. But then additionally, the woman has been out of the workforce long enough. That doesn't take that much time anymore to be out of the workforce with the world changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now what is she supposed to do? How long does it get back into action? I mean, these are things to consider. And so since we're talking to people about evaluating themselves, second marriage, well, that still means, whether it's a first, second, or third marriage, you still have to evaluate yourself. And who do you want to be?
Oh, that's the burning question. Who do I want to be? And my point is, figure that out before you walk down the aisle. Don't try figuring it out after you're in a multi-dimensional situation that is constantly shifting and changing because you're involved in another person. When we marry someone, and we take those covenants under God, we entangle our energy. It takes a lot of work to unwind energy. It's not something you do overnight. So these people that are jumping into the next marriage before they've done that work are, they're asking for trouble. I just can't fathom it. But more importantly, is to figure yourself out before you get married. It's a lot less work than trying to figure yourself out when you're with someone.
Yes, and to your point, I uploaded an episode maybe a month or so ago. A woman named Wendy Tamis Robbins. And she's an attorney and she suffers from huge anxiety. And so now she's working with people to deal with that and be efficient in work and all of that. And what she was saying is she knows why she married the first person because it goes back to how she was raised and all this. But
sure.
She married the second person. They did the work. They did the work. They talked about themselves. They were vulnerable for each other. They looked at what they wanted their futures to be, and they didn't hold back on anything that they felt influenced the other person in not liking them. They just let it all hang out. And that actually helped her deal with her anxiety as well.
Of course it would. Anytime there's some kind of negative emotion going on, and I wouldn't necessarily call anxiety a negative emotion. It's a byproduct of fear. So anytime there's something like that going on, there's a deeper root issue that still needs to be healed. And that stuff shouldn't be ignored. It shouldn't be band-aided with medication. What I'm really trying to say here is that each one of us creates our own reality, and we attract and draw to us who we are being with ourselves. And when we can come to terms with that, then we can change anything. But as long as we're not willing to accept that and we want to blame it on somebody else, we're always going to be on that merry-go-round looking for something outside of us to make us feel good, to fix us. I mean, think about this. You have two people that are underdeveloped mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And they come together. Remember the Jerry Maguire movie, the line, "You complete me," in the elevator? I just was like, yawn, There's nothing more ridiculous. Come to the table complete. Take the time, spend the money, find the help to work on yourself. There's no shame in that. There's no rule. You have to be married by a certain point in your life and live a certain way. That's a social construct.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And when you were talking about anxiety and fear, I've had 2 anxiety attacks. And in both cases, fear preceded it. I just didn't know what it was. And now that I've had 2, I'm like, oh, been there, done that. I can evaluate. I'll deal with it the next time it happens. Now, I have a friend who's kind of in the entertainment industry. He's out there a lot. And he said that he was plagued with anxiety attacks when he was younger. And so there was a lot of fear that the environment he grew up in was not good. It was very
trauma,
very
trauma.
Uncertain.
Yeah.
Didn't have 2 parents that he could attach to and connect with. So he said he remembers being in the ambulance, the last time he was in an ambulance, saying, with intention, I will never live like this again.
Oh my God, thank you. That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. And I wanted you to comment on attention. He lives without fear now. He lives with abandon. He makes the choices that make him happy. He's not married. I'm almost thinking not marrying makes people happier than marrying. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think that personally, I think who you marry is probably the biggest decision you'll ever make in your life, because that person can, tear you down, as we can look at clients that are narcissistic and they tear other people down, or they can build you up. And like the example you were making with Tom Brady, his wife energetically propping him up so he could perform. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that being clear when things are starting to unravel because the points of connection are no longer effective, and being willing to do the work to create new ones, even if that means there's a shift in the dynamic of the relationship. And furthermore, not every relationship is a lifer. Some of them run their course, like maybe for your first marriage, for example, maybe it just ran its course, and the growth that was there and that was stimulated exhausted itself, and it was time to go a different direction. But here's a question that begs asking: could you have had that growth without having to be married?
No, I think the marriage actually helped with the self-awareness and the growth.
Okay.
I needed a mirror, your word. I needed a mirror to work off of.
Well, there's a lot of mirrors in the world. There are. And I'm not saying that you made a mistake or anything. That's not the point at all. I'm just asking an open-ended question of, when we make these decisions in our lives, and marriage is, to me, it's the biggest decision I would ever make, So when you make these decisions in your life, are there other ways to get the growth that the stakes aren't so high?
I don't know. Doesn't growth equal stakes? Doesn't the amount of growth equal the intensity of the stakes?
The stakes are mistakes.
Well, I mean, they're all good, unless it cripples you somehow and you can't get past it. But it's all good. Hopefully you haven't hurt anybody in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
My next door neighbor, her mother was married 6 times. And I watched the way she
Holy cow.
relationships. And I'm like, thank you for telling me your mother's been married 6 times. I see that now.
Yeah.
I see what you're choosing for yourself.
Oh, that's brilliant. What you're choosing for yourself. Right?
Yeah, the compromises being made.
The word choice. Everything, we live and die by the quality of our choices. I used to say we live and die by the quality of our self-talk, which is true, but the choice thing is humongous. It's everything. So
I want to go back to Tom and Giselle, because it's such a great example of.
You have 2 minutes, then we have to say goodbye.
Okay.
I know I'll miss you too, but
she really provided a lot of energy to him to be successful. And I want her to be proud of what she did. I want him to be proud of what she did too, because look what's happening.
Well, it's a hell of a contribution. How do you measure that, right?
Yeah.
Hell of a contribution.
I want them to stay married.
I think, I know, I adore you. You're such a groupie.
Unabashed.
I think if I could make another point, is that do as much work on yourself as possible to become sovereign, which is how we're born. We're born sovereign. And then we learn to be dependent. We learn to be codependent. We have to relearn to be independent. So do that much work on yourself, and then marry someone who's sovereign. And you'll have a fabulous relationship of friendship and fun and bliss and all.
Well, this may have to be for another podcast, but how do you determine that other person is sovereign? Because
every person we have a relationship with is us pushed out.
My God, there's so much for me to think about now.
Yeah, right. That's a whopper statement right there.
Yeah.
Because what it says is that there's nothing in your life that you can blame on anybody else.
You shouldn't. You really shouldn't. Because even if somebody perpetrated something, if you just use it as a learning experience, as a growth experience, it can be the best thing that happened for you, to you, for you.
You.
Yeah.
You.
I know it sounds cliche, but it's true.
It is true.
It's your get out of jail card is to say, okay, what can I learn from this? Let's not be sad. What can I learn from this? Let's get on it now.
What's possible? What's possible between us? What would you like to expand to? What inspires you? And let's do that.
And let me end with a thing from Brene. And she said at the very beginning of Call to Courage, she had lived a good deal of her life scaling herself down to a small world.
Of course. I've had those relationships where I didn't know myself very well. I was still learning a lot about me. I was still learning me. And being a giver, it was easy to do that. But then I'd get pissed off at myself. And then the whole thing would just like fall apart. Because it wasn't built on anything solid.
Right.
A small you is not a solid you. And this bouncing around from relationship to relationship, I've never done that. I've always taken a few years in between. I've probably spent more of my life single, like between relationships, not in a relationship, than I have in relationships, because I would recognize, and then I'll tell you an experiment I did, and then we'll say goodbye. I would recognize myself, and I would go, whoa, girl, you need to work on yourself, you know? And then we'd end up breaking up, and I would go work on myself. So then I had this period where for about 10 years where I really didn't date, or I wasn't in a relationship, not anything long-term. And I decided to do an experiment. And the experiment was when I would go out socializing with my friends or whatever, depending on, I would just observe who I was attracting. What kind of man was I attracting? And then I would look at that and I would go, okay, I don't like this. So I need to go home and back to the drawing board. And I just used it as a tool to keep developing myself. Yeah. Willing to wait and not settle.
Right.
Maybe that's the question everybody should ask themselves. Am I willing to wait and not settle?
Yeah, no, very, very important. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, like what's the desperation? Are most people?
I want to have kids. I want to have a family. I hate living alone.
Yeah, so most people are just can't stand themselves. How can you expect someone to handle you if you can't stand being alone?
Right.
I have a client right now that he just hates being alone. He just wants a woman so bad. And I'm like, if you can't handle your own company and enjoy life and have fun and be creative, why should some woman put up with you?
Exactly right. I have never, ever, ever been lonely. I can say that. And I've traveled and worked by myself, lived in hotels 10 months out of the year.
Yeah, me too. You and I are we're both gypsies, Judith.
I think so.
I'm a 5-star gypsy. Are you a 5-star gypsy? Yeah, she's like, yes, all day long. I know. I'll go camping if it's a $1 million RV. I got that wired all day long. I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So give us a little bit about your business. I know that you're in all seriousness, you're amazing at what you do. You're like a super expert at helping people unwind marriages without killing each other. So Tell us just a snippet about that.
Okay, so we all have to grow and morph and move our businesses forward. At least I do. So the two things I had been doing for the past 10 years, filing for divorce as a paralegal with an additional license and mediating. Okay, so that's all fine, well, and good. 3.5 years, I started the podcast, which gave me a different voice than the one I could use one-on-one with my client.
Sure.
I was
different perspective,
talking to experts. That's how I met you. And so that really opened up my world. Last year, starting in July, I started developing a public speaking career because at the age that I'm at, with the experience that I have, I said, you know what? It's time to really give me a different voice and help people in a different way.
Well, you should go down to Newport and do some speaking.
Oh, without a doubt, huh?
Yeah, right. So what's your URL for your website?
Well, there's two. So theamicableddivorceexpert.com for the podcast and the blog, theamicableddivorceexpert.com, and Divorce Resource Inc. for mediating and filing. I'm working on my speaker website now, and I think I want to combine it with the podcast website to make it all about communicating.
Yeah, 100%. Do it.
Yeah, and I just trademarked something called Recipe for a Heart Healthy Divorce. I premiered it to a group of mental health professionals last week for the Zara Mental Health Symposium, and it's catching fire.
I love it.
To book this speech more. And I do have a formula that works that I'd love to share with people.
Cool. And I think people should contact you. I know you do good work. Really, truly. I so appreciate you jumping on here with me today. This has been a lot of fun.
It was easy. Again, as you said when you opened, we have a rhythm.
We do.
We enjoy our conversation, and I just love listening to you talk. It's different. It's so different and so beneficial to me.
Bless your heart. Thank you. I really appreciate that. It means a lot to me. So everybody, thank you for tuning in, subscribing, liking, definitely dropping a comment. Helps build the channel. I have this podcast on every major podcast platform that exists. iTunes seems to be where I'm getting a lot of traction. So if you're an iTunes person, definitely get over there and drop a comment. Let me know what topics you'd like me to cover, and I'll endeavor to do so. If you just send me a message, that would be awesome. You know, with everything that's going on in the world, really make sure that you stay aligned, you stay alert, and most importantly, you stay awake.